Good afternoon and welcome to the June 2nd City Council Workshop. Chad, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Glad to. Join me in prayer. Father God, we come to you and thank you for this day and all the many blessings you bestow upon us each day, Lord. I thank you for our city, for our council, and I ask that you be with us as we do business for the city, Lord. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Stand for the pledges.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, this is a work session, and items are intended to provide opportunities for City Council to study and discuss various issues and gather and analyze information. Council will not take formal action on matters presented at a work session, but may direct staff to place items on future agendas for formal consideration. Item 3A, consider zoning district options and related ordinance amendments for HUD Code manufactured housing. Mr. New.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Mike New, Executive Director of Development and Infrastructure. What we want to cover today is formally start the conversation. We've been had 3 meetings with our zoning ordinance subcommittee regarding manufactured housing. We presented probably about 10 months ago to the council many of the legislative changes that came about from the last Texas legislative session, one of the large ones being Senate Bill 785. I'll touch on that in a minute, but what we're going to do today is just kind of give council and the public, give you guys an overview of what it means in terms of legislation that we're required to follow as a city. Some of the specifics particular to what our regulations consist of within zoning, within development standards, and then how does this apply? What do we need to do? What's the action that we'll need to take? And can we start that process with council's feedback tonight? Hopefully we get through a lot of the background here so that when we're ready to move forward and there's decision points and we get into some of the details and the weeds of the items, we won't need to cover so much of the background. So we want to give that overview today and let council kind of absorb that as we hopefully move forward in our discussions and proposed actions. Oh, we don't have that screen, do we? Okay, let me back up because that might be a little backwards. So let me jump to this third slide.
You know we can't see.
You can't see the screens at all.
He's working on it.
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but we have your
You've
hand.
got them on paper.
Yeah.
Right.
So jump to slide 3, purpose and legislative context. The purpose of this, and I'll use my paper as well. Good thing I printed these out. The purpose of this conversation is really to identify options that we have at our disposal and amendments that we can propose that can comply satisfactorily to Senate Bill 785. The bullet points of that bill are pretty straightforward. It's a one-page bill, but it underlines some very important aspects of zoning and particularly zoning and regulation for municipalities. One, it requires municipalities with zoning to permit HUD code manufactured homes as a by right use. By right meaning it's permitted without additional permitting restrictions or subjective restrictions in at least one residential district. It prohibits requiring a specific use permit, which we do allow. We require specific use permits for mobile home parks. I'll touch on that as well. Where other housing types do not face that requirement. We'll touch on why that's an important one for us to consider. Applications deemed approved if not acted on within 45 days. That is consistent with the shot clock bill also passed. It's something that our Planning and Zoning Commission is very familiar with and how we approve subdivision plats and consider zone change requests. Based on some of the research that staff has done, we estimate that 44% of Texas municipalities with zoning must update their ordinances in some fashion to comply. And the regulation, the legislation does exempt historic districts and provide for pre-existing deed restrictions. So consistent with many of the other housing type legislation from our legislators in the last 2 to 3 years, They do provide many, many exemptions for homeowner associations with deed restrictions. So cities have to comply with certain things, but if HOAs further restrict those or have covenants that restrict those, they are exempted. And we'll touch on that as well. So the core problem we're trying to address here is that cities have, like Nacogdoches, have effectively banned manufactured housing through zoning on single lots. Many municipalities had no zone where a HUD code manufactured home could be placed as a matter of right, and we fall into that category. The legislature concluded this was improper use of local zoning authority that was worsening the state's existing housing shortage. What you see there is there's a demand of about 320,000 additional units needed to meet the demands across the state. We'll have some specific numbers locally. Let me go back before we get real deep into this. I probably should have flipped these slides. I can do that in the final version. What is a HUD code manufactured home? It's a structure constructed on or after June 15, 1976. That's a specific date when HUD code building regulations were applied to these types of homes that are factory built. They're built in a factory, they're trucked over, literally moved over in pieces, large pieces, and then pieced together. Unlike traditional stick-built homes are built on a foundation, and every aspect of their construction is inspected and regulated. So they're transported in one or more sections, minimum of 320 square feet on site, built on a permanent chassis, and designed as a dwelling. If you have specific questions as we go along, I'm happy to answer those. I'll try to move through these slides. There's about 30 of them, so we'll go quickly. But if you have questions, feel free to jump in. I do have our building official, Don Shoemaker, here too. There is federal oversight. HUD does inspect these factories and retailer lots and does provide a seal confirming that HUD code manufactured homes do meet these criteria at a federal standard. There's also installation requirements. There are licensed retailers and installers that provide installation, permanent installation of these types of homes on properties where they're purchased. And then construction standards do differ a little bit in that these homes, because they come in larger pieces or pretty much built completely and trucked in, they're just different standards that don't necessarily comport with some of our local amendments and building codes.
So I don't know if you're going to cover this later on, but do they have a standard life expectancy for these? I mean, or a general?
We can talk about that. I think that gets into some of the concerns about depreciation with these types of structures. But they are built with, and Don, you might be able to jump in on this, the types of materials used, it's not brick and mortar, it's not stick-built lumber, so
The reason I'm
they're
asking
not
on
likely
here
to
is 'cause,
withstand
if they're
longer-term
HUD
environmental damage.
Okay, so they're not built for any kind of life expectancy or,
Don Schumacher,
so I'm
building
looking at the
official.
standard.
In '24, HUD did upgrade their standards, and so now they are built out of better wood, steel. The electrical and the plumbing are what you're going to see in a house now. Where prior to September of '24, HUD allowed them to use aluminum wiring. Now it's copper. Plumbing has to meet, the same standards as basically as ICC. If you were to build a new house, that's the plumbing that you find in a new home is what you're going to find in these manufactured homes now, because the low consumption toilets, low consumption faucets, the material, the piping, drain piping, all of that's going to be the same as what
In a
we
house.
install in a brand new house, stick-built house.
Yeah, I couldn't put a number on that. We think of traditional homes as 20 to 30 years life expectancy before major renovations or changes are needed to the foundation or the walls of the roof.
And these, you don't?
I would,
It's still a mobile home,
correct.
period.
Yeah.
We take that HUD out, you don't even have to consider the HUD, it's still a manufactured home,
Correct.
period.
And, and this is just my opinion, if you set it up, brand new manufactured home set up, and you're not moving it from one location to another, I would expect 20 years out of it easily before you start having to re-roof or try to look. And again, it's going to depend on the siding they use. A lot of them have gone to this hardy board siding, the cement So again, you know, you're gonna have to paint, but the siding's not gonna just fall off.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if it's set up and put in one location and it is going to stay there, I believe, like I said, you're gonna get 20 years easy out of it before you start having to do a lot of maintenance on it, in my opinion.
Sure, and I would say we should expect the life expectancy to be less than a traditional home, but with some of the changes that we'll discuss, I think that gap has closed with new HUD requirements, with some of the interest in seeing more manufactured homes be built and dispel some of the concerns that I think many communities have about them.
Thank you.
We're going, we can ask questions, but you have a very, very lengthy presentation to make. And I'd like to get through the presentation. If you want to ask questions, but there will be a time to ask questions later on. We're not making any decisions tonight, so you can write them down and ask them later. But that's my opinion.
Sure.
But you have a very, very lengthy presentation, and we do have another meeting after this.
Okay, I'll push on and please make notes because I'm happy to address anything after the presentation. So slide 4, Nacogdoches context. Clearly, the state has said there's a strong demand for this type of housing, HUD code manufactured housing. Nacogdoches profile, we have a profile that lends itself to a desire for this type of housing because it's so much more affordable. And we'll touch on the values in a minute. We have low to moderate income households averaging $38,855. This is American Community Survey data pulled from 2023. It's well below the Texas median income average. We do have pressures that we're anticipating. We've talked and as a community, and you've heard many times that SFA is looking to grow. They're looking to add students. Students typically, especially university students, fall into that low to moderate income category because they're going to school, they're riding on student loans, or they're not working a regular job. So they kind of fall into that category where there's a need for this or some similar affordable housing type that a traditional home just can't meet. So there's a use case potentially for that. What does our zoning ordinance say? On slide 5, we have a definition which falls right in line with HUD code manufactured housing definitions. Under dwelling manufacturer, it's a structure constructed on or after June 15, 1976. There's that date again, differentiating between HUD code and mobile home. What I didn't highlight here, and I won't touch on it too much, but there's another home type. The state calls it industrialized housing. You can also call it modular housing. It's just another way to build a home. It is also factory built, but different standards apply. I don't want to muddy the waters too much, but if you'll notice, industrialized housing is allowed in all 4 residential categories in that land use schedule example I've given you. We're not going to touch on that. It's a different category than HUD code that is driving this new legislation, but it is allowed in all residential districts. The land use schedule currently does not provide an allowable use for manufactured homes. The only allowable use under specific use permits is manufactured homes within a manufactured home park. And chapter 66, I believe, within our code of ordinances provide additional supplemental regulations regarding manufactured home parks. Zoning ordinance on slide 6. I wanted to highlight these. In section 118.202, it does talk about non-conforming uses. This is going to be applicable if we do make changes to any areas where manufactured homes might be impacted. We are going to anticipate additional non-conforming uses. Hard to predict exactly what those look like, but we do have code that provides for how we as a planning staff, how the city will treat non-conforming uses if any changes make those applicable to certain properties. Comprehensive plan on slide 7. As you know, the last time we've adopted our comprehensive plan was 2003. Formally adopted, it is the official comprehensive plan we use as a guide for determining zone changes, determining land uses, and making decisions in this regulatory environment. What does it say about manufactured housing? Vision and Goals chapter names manufactured housing as one of the city's 6 key housing issues. It continues to be one of the most affordable means of entering home ownership, but there are concerns that even though it's affordable, there's concerns that it may have a negative impact on property values and surrounding areas when applied. The policy direction and goals on slide 8 provides a criteria for possibly moving forward under this comprehensive plan, encouraging manufactured housing communities and planned unit developments that is already provided for. Someone today, even under our current code, could submit a request for planned unit development that specifically targets and utilizes manufactured homes. We have not seen that, although we've had some inquiries in pre-development meetings requesting how we might manage that, what would be the direction for them to go if there was manufactured homes proposed. So there is maybe a growing interest. I think certainly someone might be paying attention on the heels of this legislation to see how our community is treating it. Other amenities: avoiding concentration of manufactured housing in few locations. Strategically, that can be a positive or negative. How do we want to apply something like manufactured housing when it's been prohibited largely throughout the community? How does that apply now if we're going to allow those uses, and does it have negative impacts or positive impacts in other areas of our community? Slide 9, also part of the comprehensive plan, we have a future land use plan. The map graphic to the right of that slide shows you what our future land use plan looks like. Everything in yellow is single family. Everything in green is rural, single family rural. We don't designate anything, well, in addition to that, aside from the commercial and industrial. If we were to evaluate potential changes that incorporate manufactured housing, we might consider, and we'll touch on this later on in the presentation, we might consider applying some type of designation within our future land use map to identify specific areas. Specific area designation or zoning district designation is one of the two main requirements of SB 785. What the plan does not say, it doesn't designate manufactured housing zoning districts. I will say a history that probably isn't covered in detail in this. Up until 2004, the city did provide for manufactured homes on single lots under specific use permits. That ended right about the time that this comprehensive plan, a little bit after this comprehensive plan was adopted. Since then, we have prohibited manufactured homes on single lots. Any existing manufactured homes on single lots, HUD code manufactured homes or mobile homes, if they remain and they remain occupied within certain timeframes, then they can continue to be utilized in that way. They're considered legal non-conforming uses. So if we were to look at our comprehensive plan, if we look at our future land use map today and our zoning ordinance and our regulations, we would not be compatible, we would not be complying with SB 785 today. So if we're going to take a look, like our zoning ordinance subcommittee has done in discussion, let's look in general, what are we thinking about when we think about HUD code manufactured homes and property values on slide 10. There's single wide, there's double wide. Single wide is what most people think of, but there's double wide, and there's, this came from Clayton Homes in Lufkin, selling a version called Cross Mod. It's not a modular home, it is a manufactured home. It's just certain amenities are part of some of these home structures. You can think of the accession here as larger square foot footprints within different areas. What's interesting about the higher or the premium versions of these is that depending on how the homes are affixed to property, and again, I'm wishing Rhonda Ward was here. She's going to provide good input. I'll make sure she's available at our future meetings. But when appraisers look at these properties, whether or not they are permanently affixed to the ground or to a permanent foundation matters in terms of how they're valued. So when you think of properties like these, you can look at the prices here, but remember, it doesn't incorporate the land costs. It doesn't incorporate extending utilities or site grading or adding a driveway. Other standards or requirements within our residential districts add to that cost. And it's a little bit different from just comparing it to single family homes. So on our next slide, price comparison, tried to give you a sense of the difference in manufactured home prices versus single family home prices to understand the affordability factor here, the factor that's driving the state legislation in this way. The key considerations, manufactured homes in Texas average about 59% less than typical site-built homes. It's more affordable. A lot of numbers to prove that, but in general, it's in general more affordable. What about the appreciation value? There's a sense that that HUD code manufactured homes don't generally appreciate in value. It is highly dependent on whether these homes are permanently affixed. That's an important factor that we'll address later on in this presentation. If they're only considered personal property and not considered part of the land itself, then it does change how those particular housing units are valued. Relatively similar, hopefully to try and understand it, that some of the conceptions about HUD code manufactured homes in particular, they're built different today, they're valued different today, and they're certainly should be considered under a different lens, particularly with the state's interest in seeing it develop. So manufactured homes in Nacogdoches, slide 13. 3 specific examples, Millard's Apple Park subdivision, Sandia Park, Elizabeth Street, 3 areas of town with existing manufactured homes. There's also mobile homes, there's also single family homes within these neighborhood areas, just highlighting that it's present in a lot of different areas of town because of the age of our housing stock in Nacogdoches. You will see a lot of these already, and not all of them are in degrading and dilapidated conditions. There's a lot of homes and properties that are still well kept and I think are in good condition. Why is that important? We have more than 70 properties that we identified that received specific use permits for manufactured housing, specifically on single lots. That became an important tool for determining if we were to consider some regulation change in the future, what do we currently have? What's our current stock of these types of housing units? Slide 14, the subcommittee. All right. We've covered a little bit of background. We've got some context on the state legislation. We've got some context on demand, on values. As a subcommittee, what did we do? And just a reminder, our subcommittee consists of 2 council members, 2 planning and zoning members, 2 zoning board of adjustment members. And for this particular topic, our city attorney, myself, and Juan and Julio, our planning staff, as well as our building official. For this particular topic, our building official is crucial in how we chart this path going forward. The discussion items focused on evaluating existing districts for compatibility, potentially, or even new districts. Consider supplemental regulations to improve building standards as allowed by law, and identify or mitigate any conflicts with the comprehensive plan or other zoning regulations. We don't want to propose anything new that now creates a conflict with something we already have if it's avoidable. Some manufactured home type standards. What you see there in that red panel graphic, that is a red certificate. That is a HUD certificate required on HUD code manufactured homes. That basically shows that it is HUD code manufactured, just for a visual. District considerations. As we talk through some of these things and we bounce ideas back and forth, we wanted to be clear that to meet the requirement for Senate Bill 785, we had to consider allowing HUD code manufactured homes as a by right use in at least one residential district, whether it's existing or new. And it prohibits requiring a specific use permit. Reminder, we currently use specific use permits for manufactured homes only within mobile or manufactured home parks. So we looked at the 4 residential districts that we have, R1 through R4. R1, low density, largest lot, single family. It has the largest percentage of single family stick-built homes. We sort of ruled that out. It's at the end of the spectrum, and this is where a majority of our single family homes are. It's our largest lots. Probably easy to rule that one out. As we move up to R2, slightly higher density, meaning the lots are smaller, 60 foot wide by 100 foot deep. These districts have a smaller land area, and they typically buffer our R1 districts. Potentially could be consideration. R3, higher density, single family and 2 family housing. Remember, these include duplex and townhomes. These districts have the largest percentage of non-conforming manufactured homes. Remember, we talked about the specific use permits. That's a possible consideration. And then R4, our highest density multifamily housing. We sort of ruled that one out off the bat. We do have a provision for R4 as well as B2 for manufactured home parks. We didn't feel like allowing it as a by right use in R4, that would strip away the regulations that we have for manufactured home parks. There'd be a big conflict there, so easy to rule that one out. Okay? And what you see in the map is with our two possible identifiers, we've got R2 and R3 highlighted there. All of the R2 and R3 zoning districts with some additional layers showing specific use permits, unbuildable properties being city property or things like communication towers.
Page are you on now?
I am on
They're not numbered.
at page 16, I'm sorry.
Go back one.
My graphic's covering up the page. Page 16, it's the second zoning ordinance, or third zoning ordinance subcommittee slide.
Your pages aren't numbered. That's what's correct, so.
My graphic's covering up the page numbers, apologize. This is just before slide 17. So we've narrowed down our discussion to R2 and R3. We're looking at R2 with a microscope now. There are very few existing manufactured homes on single lots in R2. There's 45 lots in historic district overlays, a consideration because those would be exempted. Has 2 active manufactured home park areas particularly on Seal Street that predate the zoning ordinance. Very old manufactured home parks located in R2. R3, it has our largest number of existing manufactured homes on single lots. 1 lot in historic overlay district. It's a church, I believe, and I'm trying to remember that location. It's southeast side. Has 2 active manufactured home park areas, and Miller's Apple Park subdivision, we'll touch on that one more time. That's a unique subdivision within our community that the covenants provide specifically for manufactured homes on single privately owned lots. That was established in 2002, just prior to our comp plan. So another option, we've looked at existing districts. What would a new district look like? Some of the things that need to be considered in addition to what our criteria of the comp plan says: neighborhood character and compatibility, infrastructure, floodplain potential and hazard siting, and long-term goals. Again, these are the things that overarching, this is direction provided by the council through documents like this. Going off of our existing comprehensive plan, what is the legal framework that SB 785 allows for? They don't prohibit reasonable standards. In order to permit manufactured housing in at least one zoning district, we as a city cannot prohibit reasonable standards, thresholds, or location criteria. We don't have to restrict those things. Those are things that the legislation did not provide direct guidance on. Potential options for cities to sort of make this their own and not be required to do things exactly driven as the state directs. But we have to be neutral, and we have to ground our justification for any additional requirements or regulation in planning rationales. We cannot be arbitrary or capricious. My favorite term from city attorney. Slide 18. Our future land use consideration. This would be the proposed amendment. This would be the first of 2 actions in order to comply with Senate Bill 785. We'd have to recommend amendments to our future land use plan and identify physical areas within that map for some type of district that is compatible to manufactured housing. I'll keep going. Slide 19, future land use considerations. This graphic was shown to our zoning ordinance subcommittee. Forgive the crudeness, what we're trying to do is identify areas that meet criteria that we've established. We've set a baseline for our discussion, particularly within our 2 districts, buffered by other single family, located approximate to other single or manufactured home properties within R3. And then again, if we're prioritizing this as infill development as opposed to new development, it's going to be within existing areas of the community. And then a zone change consideration, second part. We've identified a district, check. Where is it in the map? It can't just be in our future land use plan. It has to be in a physical area, and that zoning has to be allowed by right. In our review of these 4 areas, and I'll touch on it, in the lower right corner, you see in the southeast area, Miller's Apple Park subdivision already has covenants, already provides for that within the subdivision plat. Ideal candidate for this change that would not negatively affect the properties that are located there. Again, a proposed option. Slide 20, zeroing in on these circled areas so you can see them specifically. You're looking at the northwest area, Old Tyler Road. You're looking at some of these streets off Old Tyler Road, Elizabeth Street, and a few other ones. There's probably about 100 lots within this area, very, very closely knit, but you have existing manufactured homes. You have approximate manufactured home park to the northwest, and it's not bounded by R1, it's not bounded by R4, it's somewhat isolated, but also somewhat together. We can sort of draw lines here and identify a plausible district. This is a candidate for a future land use map amendment. Slide 21. On the southwest side, this is Linda Lane, Townsend Avenue, right at that corner. What's highlighted there is a manufactured home park, but you see a few other existing manufactured homes on those lots. You see on the north Seal Street in the R2 district, you see two of the existing manufactured home parks, as mentioned earlier. The homes and the lots in this area, older housing stock, much like the southeast area, could be a candidate for future land use map designation. Slide 22. In the southeast area, bounded particularly by University Drive, Main Street, and Martin Luther King Boulevard, you have an area that has many existing, probably our highest density of existing or former manufactured home SUP designations. And those stars identify those manufactured home uses that we were able to pull from our JES map. And then lastly, touching again on Millard's Apple Park subdivision, this is in the lower, pretty much at the south tip of town. This subdivision was created, it also lies within an R3 district, and those lines are drawn and platted, an ideal candidate for complying with state legislation, but potentially minimizing any arbitrary impacts from decisions that we would consider. Moving on to slide 24, in addition to just identifying a district, identifying our future land use map, what are the supplemental regulations? What would be the other requirements to address some of the concerns about potential depreciation, whether or not homes actually have a lasting impact versus single-family homes? How can regulatory additions to our zoning code provide better standards for these types of homes? We've designated R3M as duplex and HUD code. We're permitting it by right. One of the things that I'll address, and we can go ahead and jump to the next slide, slide 25, specifically the red lines. Three aspects of this that we'll touch on are, can you apply it to a permanent foundation? Not just anchoring it to the ground, but applying it to a permanent foundation. There is a guide that HUD has established called the Permanent Foundations Guide that provides for licensed engineering review of concrete foundation. These are actually triggers that allow these types of housing units to receive financing, to allow more homeowners to potentially purchase these homes in conjunction with land and property. If they're treated separately, that does impact someone's ability to actually finance these all together and provide for a full HUD code manufactured home on one lot. We can keep the skirting. The skirting is provided for. That does not have to change from our code. HUD code provides for that. And then the last addition, which many cities have taken on, is providing for a minimum age, meaning that property owners wouldn't necessarily be allowed to truck in a manufactured home from 1978. Okay, different standards then. Why is that important to us? We've updated our building codes to the 2024-2023 standard across the board. We have new standards. HUD, as of 2024, has new standards. It seems reasonable that we apply those standards with any additions that we add to our community with HUD code manufactured homes. Slide 26 is for reference. It's a build comparison showing you the difference. And let me jump to recommended next steps. I blew through that real fast, but basically this begins the process. We would engage the public. We'd host a neighborhood meeting or two, one to address comp plan changes, future land use map changes, another one specifically to address neighborhood feedback on a potential city-initiated zone change request. And then we go through planning and zoning and council for action. Post-action, we would identify permanent changes to our maps and then review and monitor as needed. Again, even with a significant change like this, that doesn't mean that future changes couldn't come about and improvements couldn't occur with what we're proposing. Finally, council guidance, your feedback on our approach to compliance, your support either to move forward or directions on addressing other concerns or gathering more information. And I'll happy to answer questions.
So, this is really complex. Y'all have been working on it a long time. I know you asked originally for some ideas about whether to totally take a whole zone and have that, and we were able to get feedback. This is really complicated. So you've addressed the impact, you've addressed policies, procedures, a comprehensive plan, a variety of things, and we just now got this.
Mm-hmm.
So I have questions on probably half the pages.
Sure.
So is your suggestion that we just move forward, just rubber stamp? Or are we gonna have an opportunity to sit down and really discuss some of these variables? There are a variety of things.
I think we're open to council's feedback. Whatever direction that is today, we'll take that and run with it. If council needs to receive a presentation maybe from a different perspective or in more detail on a particular item, we can do that. One of the things that is unique about this workshop is it precludes a formal presentation for action. So the staff is not bringing something forward yet. We want council to have the opportunity to sort of guide the direction on where we go, because we can go a lot of different directions here. We've narrowed down our scope a little bit, and I'm throwing a lot of information at you because I want you to see our methodology, that it's not a finger in the wind. There is some logic behind it. There's some history, and we've got to make sure we're checking all the regulatory boxes as we do this. So I'm open to any feedback at all, and certainly we're not asking council to feel pressured to move forward if council's not ready to move forward.
I'd just like to say this. You have spent a lot of time on this. It is a statute, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that means it's law.
The ordinance code has been amended.
It will
Okay.
be law as
All
of
right.
September 1st.
September 1st, okay. All right, you spent a lot of time on this because that's your job, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So, if you want to put this on the agenda, Kathleen, the next 2 months and talk about it, we can, But
I
he's
would
going to
just-
have a decision.
I would just point out that the occupations code goes into effect September 1.
No matter what, right?
So we should have our ordinance in place before that date.
Okay, well,
That would be my recommendation.
I'm good with that. If your attorney needs to look at it, he can look at it.
So let me go back to some of the principles, okay?
Yes.
Because there are a lot of really complicated things in here, and some of them I just have questions even about what the slide means. So it sounds like the principles where you landed after 3 committee meetings and talking through and sometimes talking with each of us, is that you are trying not to do a broad sweep. Is that correct? You are trying to identify
That'd be
where those homes already exist. And so looking at the places where they're potentially, because they already exist, where there would be consensus from the residents that this would be a good thing. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yes.
That
Yes.
that's how you're landing here?
That's the direction we're headed. I think what we may need to confirm with the council, and again, we're basing some of this direction on what the comp plan already says, right? Where it's already driving us with manufactured housing.
But we're gonna change the comp plan too.
Well, the
Yes.
comp plan language itself may not need to change. Really, our future land use map would need to be updated in order for it to make sense of how do we inject manufactured housing as a single family component within our map.
Well, let me go back to the overall principles.
Yes.
About how you landed where you landed. And so correct me if I'm wrong, this is what I derived from this and some of our discussions.
Mhm.
That you look to see where there already was manufactured housing.
Correct.
Okay, so, and you sort of focused on that instead of doing a broad sweep.
Yes, in lieu of a broad sweep, because what we didn't want to do is either seem arbitrary or risk not being able to identify it strategically.
And you had to have a significant amount of land that, I mean, that's part of that.
Well, significant was
whatever
part of the original draft
Right.
language, and I wanted to be careful to not state that because as we're kind of walking through this, we, as a staff, to speak to one of the philosophies here and how we're approaching this, we didn't want to simply point a finger or draw a circle in a map area without having some justification and consistency with the comp plan, with our current regulations, because we don't want to seem arbitrary and we don't want to put prospective homeowners in a position to have to now wrestle or protest or deal with changes that were initiated by us. So as far as proactively seeking zone changes as opposed to identifying in our future land use map, we wanted to limit that approach.
So if you had to choose the three things, or two things, where you landed on this proposal, what would they be? What would be those variables? What would be those principles that guided you to land on this? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'd like to
Sure,
hear
I
what they
think
are.
and happy to have our subcommittee members chime in too, but the approach was be strategic, okay? We didn't want, that's the broad brush approach you mentioned, that we need to be strategic, and the methodology that we're presenting, I think, speaks to that. Promote infill development, okay? We targeted existing lots where you have a lot of non-conforming uses because these manufactured homes were once approved but now not approved, and it puts homeowners in a difficult position to continue improvements or to make significant changes because of those non-conforming uses. So for promoting infill development, these are target areas that we start with. That doesn't mean that we don't consider others in the future. And then the other one is, how do we meet our obligation? Meeting our obligation with state legislation is the third.
You have, it wasn't just Mike doing this.
No, I know.
It was, you have two colleagues on this council that were asked to be on the committee, and y'all been to the meetings, right?
Yeah, we've been there.
Okay, all right. So it's not, I don't think anything nefarious that he's trying to ram it down anybody's
I'm not asking you
throat.
questions about, I'm trying to understand the principles of how we got there, and also what is the meaning of when we move forward? What are we deciding? And I'm not clear
Okay.
yet on that.
I would say there's two decisions that would be made ultimately in order to achieve compliance. One, we're updating our future land use map. That's one distinct action. In that update, we're identifying areas where HUD code manufactured housing could be applied. Updating the future land use map doesn't mean they're applied. It means these are areas desirable for this type of housing.
And that is on what page here, that map? I'm trying to,
Again, the actual map when proposed is going to look different, but slide 19, and then the subsequent 1, 2, 3, 4 slides show you those particular areas. Again, those lines they're not refined as they would be in presentation, but these are the areas of the community based on, again, R3 residential district, existing manufactured home, use types and densities, and direction. So this would be the first action, updating the future land use map to reflect these areas of the community where
somebody could request.
somebody could request a
And
zone
get that
change.
without having to meet any other
Well,
requirement.
they would follow the normal zone change request process.
And are we creating a new zone?
The proposal would be, based on our discussion of the subcommittee, yes, we would be creating a new zoning district as an action item with that, okay? Future land use map designation,
Okay,
and it's part of the comprehensive plan amendment. We're identifying a new zoning district. We've,
District, okay.
for presentation purposes, we've called this R3M. R3M. And R3M would allow for single-family traditional, it would allow for two-family, it would allow for manufactured home, anything within R1, R2, and R3 existing. What it does not do is this land use would not be extended to R4. It would still be prohibited in R4, okay?
Okay.
I'm getting a little bit in the details of all the points that this touches within our zoning ordinance. So with that, the second step we would take is we initiate a zone change request. The city would initiate a zone change request for a particular area. One area that sort of meets all these criteria already, although you've had manufactured homes that are non-conforming, is the Millard's Apple Park subdivision. It's a well-defined area, it's platted, it's single lots. It checks the boxes as far as state legislation. It's an area we could define within this district that would not change existing conditions for that subdivision. In other areas, there are no defined subdivisions like this particular one. It's a good target for us, but it's a starting point.
So it sounds like not changing existing conditions is one of the variables you were trying to,
To start, yes.
to look
To
at.
minimize impacts and hopefully mitigate any concerns. We essentially want to see how this plays out.
Can our infrastructure handle this, an influx of new homes?
I would say it can. I'm not saying this, and this is the monitoring aspect of it. So just by updating our comprehensive plan to create the district, updating our future land use map, it doesn't automatically give by right uses to the entire community and drop in manufactured homes everywhere, okay? Initiating our zone change request doesn't even do that either. If we were to establish this particular subdivision as an R3M subdivision and district-wise, property owners, it's still their decision whether they want to improve under that use or not improve or change. So it doesn't, we won't see an immediate impact, I don't think. We may see an interest in other zone change requests. It may be something that Council and Planning and Zoning Commission over the next year or two after implementation may consider, may have to wrestle with. But no, I would say considering the proposal is still primarily single-family based and two-family based, the density
It's not a
would,
chicken.
would not overly burden our
It's
infrastructure.
not a chicken plant.
It's not a chicken plant or a data center.
okay, so I'm going back to the
Yes, ma'am.
three things so far that you're saying is you want to update the future land map, future land use map to identify these places. Then the second thing is you're going to create a new zoning district, which is R3M, that people could apply for. And then third is you're going to initiate some zone changes for
On a
And you s-
specific area.
and specific, and are you just gonna do the Millards, are you gonna do other, just start with that one?
Just the Millards. It's well-defined. It's kind of it's not a slam dunk because we're going to engage the neighborhood and get their feedback. So
Okay.
it's something that seems straightforward to pursue, but we'll pursue it like we do any other requests.
And those are the three things that you're trying to accomplish
Those would be the actions prior to September
for
1.
September 1st, okay.
Or
Thank
in
you.
that range.
Is very,
Yes.
very helpful to clarify all of this
Yes.
upfront. Some of the other questions, I can ask you, but I do think it's my responsibility to know what it is we're
Absolutely.
being asked and what we're voting for, and to see how it impacts the whole city.
And-
We're not voting on anything tonight.
I know, but
No,
I'm
but
trying
this-
to clarify.
Okay,
This
you'll
is-
have time to do
yeah,
that.
this is
You,
good.
you,
This is
you
the
will have
pur-
time, you will
This is
have,
the purpose of this, is to ask questions
it's
and to
information,
clarify.
and then you'll have plenty of time to
One
ask
of
your
the,
questions.
Um,
Uh-huh.
One of the points that came out of our discussions of the subcommittee was, this is a lot.
Yeah.
This covers a lot of ground, this is pointing in a lot of
It is
different
a lot.
directions. And the more we communicate this, the better we're going to get.
Right. So you're
When
not
we
gonna-
engage the neighborhood and the community, we'll have to simplify this even more.
Right.
This is the group that has all of the base knowledge. I can throw all this stuff at you, but we'll have to simplify this. We'll have to make sure we're communicating where people can understand how we're approaching this and what we intend to do, so that there's no fear about what we're doing.
So all of these other things that are in here, like the policies and the procedures and the comp plan, you're only talking about the land use part of the comp plan, right? Or are you gonna change? So my question is, when we go through this, I don't really know if do we need to look at every single piece of this, or are you just gonna hit the future land use part and then later on change policies and procedures? Because, I mean, you got a big chunk like this, and then you also have a small piece.
So our comprehensive plan doesn't, there are other comprehensive plans, more recent versions, where they describe in detail. There's a lot of form-based comprehensive plans that other cities have adopted, page by page, specifically addressing, or they might be unified development ordinance codes, specifically addressing the particular districts. Our existing comprehensive plan doesn't do that. It provides general guidance. And it does mention manufactured housing. I did include that in the bullets on a couple of the slides here. So if there are changes, all we will do, I guess in a sense to answer your question, is we'll look for making sure there's no conflicts with what we're presenting
Just language.
and how the comprehensive
the
plan
language.
states it.
Okay.
It kind of plays both sides. It's addressing concerns, but also providing a narrative to the need for that type of housing.
So are there concrete lines to this district, or is it, I mean, if I'm building in an R3, I can look at that zone and know that it's on this line, Old Tyler Road and whatever. Does this have streets, concrete areas that it's in?
So if we were seeking a zone change request for the Millard's Apple Park, for instance, there would be very specific lines because that would be a zone change. We'd be creating a new district physically. Under the future land use application, we're identifying general areas. We may provide distinction with certain roads, like in the southeast area, may provide distinction with University Drive, Main Street, MLK Boulevard. But the goal is we're identifying an area. We're not drawing hard platted lines. That's really not what the future land use map is intended to do. But we are targeting a specific area.
So when I think of manufactured homes, I think of like mobile homes, because if it has a flat roof, would it not be allowed?
There are current HUD code manufactured homes with flat roofs.
Oh, it's okay to have a flat roof?
If
I
HUD
mean, if it's
manufactured code allows
There's
it,
a difference
yes.
between, yeah, okay, I'm just curious.
And there's so many different versions. Some have pitched roofs, some
Like
have
if
flat
it's
roofs.
a $200,000 Airstream trailer, can you?
Now, recreational vehicles are not included. They would be prohibited because
Okay.
they can't be permanently affixed or shouldn't be.
Okay. Just giving you grief.
And Airstreams don't have the HUD code red panel on them. Yeah. You can go through the process, but we'll deny.
So what does the legislation require? I know it requires you to designate an area, and I'm following up on your question. I mean, are there gonna be, what area are we gonna designate? And I don't think it can just be that one Millard spot, correct?
We believe it can.
Oh, you think it can? Okay.
We believe it can. And providing for it within our code allows for future property owners to request that and follow our normal process.
Okay.
I do believe that was something that the legislature wrestled with.
Right.
I mentioned they initially included in their drafts a substantial area
Right.
to try and keep cities from sort of pigeonholing a new district
3 lots.
into basically a negligible area, not in the spirit of the legislation. And maybe that's another component of what I'm driving at. In order to comply, we want to meet the spirit of the legislation as well, but not let that dictate what we're doing. We want to be strategic ourselves.
So I know at one point the discussion, and you mentioned this, was between strictly R3 and building a new zoning district. What was the factor that changed that recommendation?
We were concerned about property owners feeling like they didn't have a say or that they might protest. There would be property owners on both sides. I think some would welcome the additional land use under R3. Others might not welcome that. And I think taking one stab at it, covering that much area, over 1,000 lots, most of them developed, I think would not be good for us. I think that's an approach being proactive. We want to keep it small so that we're giving property owners the chance to make their own decisions rather than forcing it upon them. So we see the use case on both sides of it, but we wanted to provide minimal proactive impact here as a city government and just say, let's create the opportunity. Let's identify what we think might be appropriate future land uses, but not change the districts. We would change one area to comply because it makes sense. It fits the criteria we've established, but not seek out those changes against someone's will.
Am I correct that most cities are trying to put their toe in the water and see how this works and?
So many of the younger cities have kind of established these districts, single-family mixed use. There's all kinds of lingo for it, but
Talk about the other 44%.
yeah, the 44%, the smaller communities, the older communities that have traditionally Euclidean zoning, yes, toe in the water, absolutely, toe in the water, and I wouldn't suggest or recommend to the council that we just, pinky toe in the water. We need to be, we need the whole toe in there. We need to be. It needs to make sense for us and for the legislature to see that we are seeking to comply, but also doing it our way.
So, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Thank you. Jerry, this is for you. Do you see that there's going to be some challenges to this and clarifications and all? I mean, after September 1st, I bet you there's going to be
Well,
stuff happening.
I'm sure some adjoining property owners may seek to challenge. I mean, just like any other zone change that would go through our process, notifications are sent out to adjoining property owners. Those property owners have the opportunity to object to that application. And, if they reach a certain threshold, then it may require a supermajority type vote for the approval of that application. So those things could happen. I mean, not saying it will, but it's possible.
What about Texas, across Texas? I mean, because it's a weird it's an interesting legislation, as you well know.
I can only speculate, but I would imagine that there's probably going to be some cities that may not be swift in implementing something like this and may receive some challenges from either a manufactured home group or something like that, or association, to challenge their lack of compliance with the ordinance with the occupations code that's being amended here. And so that, you might see those types of challenges. It's hard to guess. There may be some challenges as to the constitutionality of what the legislature's done here, and because and there's always depending on how cities implement these things, and what we're trying to do is to avoid this is that if you go into and just select an area arbitrarily, or you change somebody's zoning or property that's zoned one way that could take away some of the rights that they have currently with that property. It could be seen as capricious. It could also be deemed an inverse condemnation action, and so you might see those type of challenges if cities try to implement it in that way. So those are just some of the various challenges we may see. Again, that's just my guess.
Ultimately, we're going to have to make the decision first, right? The council?
The council will ultimately make the decision for Nacogdoches.
Right.
So, P&Z will have their opportunity once we go through this process, but ultimately it's going to come in front of you guys and y'all make the final decision as to what this looks like.
And not everybody's going to like it.
I'm sure that'll be the case.
So
As with any action that the city council takes, there's going to be those that oppose it.
That's right.
Yeah.
I-
I have one final question,
ahead.
if it's okay. On page 8, or the slide 8, where for the comprehensive plan, which was done in 2003, it said goals, objectives, and action. The second one, permit manufactured housing communities in all districts. So are you going to change that in the comprehensive plan, or is that our goal?
Well, that's a goal for this comprehensive plan. It's not what we're proposing to change. So manufactured housing communities would be manufactured home parks. It could be communities within planned development districts. So we provide an avenue for that.
But I'm just asking, is that the goal? Or would that be changed?
manufactured home communities are not part of any changes that we're proposing. So we're identifying those because they exist within our code and they exist in our community. We're not looking to make any changes in terms of manufactured home communities to our comprehensive plan at this time.
So that actually was the question I was trying to ask. You have several pages that are, I'm like, whoa, 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 what's this? But you're not gonna touch those. You're only gonna touch what's absolutely required right now to get us in compliance. And that's those three things we talked about. And then the rest later on, we're gonna have to look at the whole comprehensive plan
Sure.
ultimately.
And maybe another way to explain the approach is we're leaning back into our existing content. We're leaning back to the direction that it provides, to what direction that council has given over the last 2 or 3 years, what we know exists within our community. We're not trying to break new ground here because we're still in the very early, and if not quite at the early stage of having that real discussion about our comprehensive plan. We've made steps to seek funding to have that conversation again, to reignite that. We don't want this to step over that more than we have to.
So you don't see, and never mind,
Yeah.
no one is.
It-
So do you see this as two different decisions we're gonna be making? One to set up the new zone and then the other is this gonna be a two-step process or one-step process for us, or do you know?
For compliance, think of it as two. And you mentioned 3 specific actions, but 2 steps. We're making the amendment, the comp plan amendment. That means we're updating our future land use plan and we're updating our zoning ordinance. Creates a new district. Here it is.
Okay.
Once a district is created, now we seek specific action. Apply that district to a specific area, potentially Millard's Apple Park. And now we're physically creating that district if council approves and establishes that to meet state law. So 2 parts, but yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Because I'd like to say something, if you don't mind. I would like, if it's okay with everybody, I would like for, if you need direction on this, is to proceed with what you've done so far and bring it back to the council as you wish, ever how many times you wish, to where we are able to make a decision on this by the council prior to September 1st. Is that okay with everybody?
So I think his recommendation on the last page is to proceed with a neighborhood meeting first. Is that what you're asking?
If council supports the direction, our next step will be to initiate neighborhood meetings. One for proposed zone change requests for that Millard's Apple Park. Another general community meeting to address how we are tackling this legislative change.
I'm good with that too. I just thought everybody wanted to talk about it some more.
Yeah.
You know.
And we can, similar to what we do in our board and commission meetings, we have a sort of standing line item, zoning ordinance subcommittee update. As we progress, as this evolves and we get more feedback, we can always do a staff report to the council
This
on
is
how that's
kind
going.
of during all our budget stuff, isn't it?
Hopefully we get ahead of some of the action items on the budget. That would be our goal, is that we're tackling that so you guys don't have to sort of mix these 2 items in the same meeting.
But you're not going to rush us through the budget? Yes or no? It's a yes or no question.
That's a yes.
We're going to be as thorough to give you the opportunity to make sound, informed decisions.
So, but I imagine that after you do have that neighborhood meeting with Millard's Park subdivision, so I would like to visit with you just for specifics in here.
Sure.
Because some of those things I have questions, but I can do that on my own. But I imagine after you have those 2, that neighborhood meeting, and I don't know if you need a whole community meeting, but you might, then you'll have other issues that are brought up that you might not have considered and you might not have thought
Sure.
about. Or,
I think our goal in the community setting is to maybe dispel some rumors, be clear about the direction we're headed, answer questions, to give people information. If they want to get in the weeds, we can answer it in that particular forum, so that they're not coming up during our public hearings and wondering, what are we doing? Hopefully those that are most interested can get their questions answered in that setting, and hopefully dispel any fears that if they're against it or they're for it, that their property is not being impacted in one way or the other without their say.
Okay. Did we give you direction? And is everybody okay with the direction that we gave you?
We will proceed with notifications to set up at least 2 neighborhood meetings, one for the zone change and one for the comp plan amendments.
Yeah, Mike, I'd like to thank you again for all your work on this and our colleagues on the council. I think you did a great job. I think it was thought out brilliantly and thoroughly, and we certainly don't want to tell you how to do your job,
But you can.
you'll end up bringing back an end product that is fair. They want everybody to like it, but it'll be fair.
To speak to Jerry's comment real quick, somebody will be against what we're doing. Somebody will be opposed to it for their reasons. We'll hear them out. We think we're sort of navigating these beacons here and what we need to do versus what we want to do. But we'll share that feedback as we get it with council. So if council decides that as a group that you want us to take a different direction, we can do that as well. But we'll keep updating as we go along.
I think distilling out the principles is really helpful on there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody got any more questions? That concludes this meeting. We'll adjourn and we'll have our regular scheduled meeting at 5:30. Thank you very much for coming, everyone.